During the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Jamie Rubin was one of the key faces of American administration in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the Balkans. And after that, he worked for second administration, that was administration of President Biden, and he joins me now. Jamie, during the war and everything else, what was gravely happening here in the Western Balkans, you were first assistant to then Ambassador Albright in United Nations. After that, you worked at the State Department as a spokesperson. Jamie, how you remember that time and how important was for the U.S. administration to react on everything what was going on here in the Western Balkans?
Well, thank you for that question. The Bosnia War was a very important moment in my professional life. At the time of Srebrenice, I was working for Madeleine Albright, but before that, I first went to Sarajevo during the siege in 1992 when I was working for Senator Biden, who became president. And one of the things I was proudest of at the time was to bring Senator Biden to Bosnia to meet Milosevic, to meet Izetbegovic, to meet Tudjman, who was the president of Croatia, and that really sensitized him to the war in Bosnia. And like me, Senator Biden realized that this was a world-defining moment for the West, for its ability to lead in the world, for the United States, and for the world to understand that massive murder of innocent people for who they were, not any national security reason, was unacceptable in the modern world. Eventually, that came through in 1995. It took a long time. It took 3 years, but it did happen. Secretary Albright, then ambassador, was instrumental in convincing President Clinton to use military power in combination with diplomacy. And for me, the real lesson of Bosnia is that combination of diplomacy backed by military force. And when a president and the NATO alliance was able to do that in Bosnia, and then later, much earlier in Kosovo, there we were able to stop the genocide before it happened. And those two events, the war in Bosnia, the war in Kosovo, were frankly, to me, the most important things I was part of because I had an influence over them. And we did the right thing. And later in Kosovo, we did it early and we did it well. Let's remember that Kosovo is the last successful American military intervention where the people were saved from mass murder. The Serbs were removed from Kosovo. It's now an independent, functioning democracy, and all of that was done with the minimum of loss of life on all parts, frankly. And it was a success, both in the way it was done and the fact of it being done. So the Balkans, to me, are the last successful American military intervention. And I was very pleased to read, and I'll end and answer your questions in a moment. The Economist last year said something very important. They said that June 1999, when the war in Kosovo ended, was ready for this, the height of European civilization, where the leaders together, the West, got together and did the right thing for the right reasons. And that gave me great pride.
But Jamie, if that was a pride, when I spoke with David Sheffer just days ago, he told me that for weeks and months, Clinton administration was discussing around sit-room table what to do about Bosnia before Srebrenica happened in July of 1995. Was that the lowest moment of civilization in American policy in the Balkans?
Many lower moments in Western civilization. I think 1993 was a tough year. Somalia, there was a disaster at Mogadishu. The war in Bosnia continued unendingly. In Haiti, there was a catastrophic takeover. Those three together, I think, was a low point for the Clinton administration. But eventually and carefully and successfully, we came out of that. We restored democracy to Haiti. We got out of Somalia, and then we finally, in 1995, intervened in Bosnia. Yes, it should have happened sooner. I can only say that it was something I cared a lot about. It was the reason I went to work for Madeleine Albright after working for Joe Biden. And she played an instrumental role in persuading the president to act. And when he did act, the war did stop, and Dayton peace accords followed.
Dayton peace accords followed in '95. Is not a perfect deal, but it is a deal which brought peace. Many here in the region are calling for another American intervention here in the region of Western Balkans, probably Dayton 2 or something like that. Is that your opinion, that we need another big conference, or Balkanians should deal with the issues by themselves?
I don't see this current administration having the wherewithal, the inclination, or the capability, frankly, to combine diplomacy with real power in the Balkans again. I don't think the Trump administration cares much about the Balkans. I don't think they have the right approach to Russia, who is playing such a pernicious role in the Balkans. And so I wouldn't really favor them being the architects of any new restoration of a new peace agreement, because I'm not sure it would come out right. I do believe that ultimately, after intervening in Bosnia and Kosovo, that it is up to the people in the region to do their work. I know it's very frustrating. I know that perceptions of corruption are rampant, and perceptions of incompetence are rampant, and all of that is fair enough. But I think the West has enough problems right now in the Middle East, in Asia, and Ukraine, so that the Balkan problem is not going to get the same high-level attention it once did.
Jamie, there is a lot of denial of genocide in Bosnia, and people here in the region are not respecting decisions or judgments by ICTY or ICJ. But also there is a lot of discussion about exactly that, international justice today, especially in case of Gaza. Where we stand when it comes to that and human rights in the world at the moment?
Well, thank you for that question as well. I think the issue of human rights and law is a very complex one. Unfortunately, it can be abused by political leaders. It can be abused by human rights groups themselves. It can be abused by journalists. It's a subject that has such wide-ranging interpretations about whether governments have made a full-fledged effort to avoid civilian casualties, for example, about the extent to which a commanding control exists at the top of a government for things that happen. These are very hard questions. And frankly, I believe that in the Balkans, the whole justice system has gone out of whack. And I use as an example of this the prosecution of the former president of Kosovo, Hashim Thaçi, which is a disgrace. The Kosovo government created its own tribunal at the behest of the West, and then he was prosecuted under a completely absurd theory of that he controlled everything, which was obviously not true. And frankly, they have been keeping him in prison for many years because they can't figure out how to get the trial going. I hope to testify on behalf of Hashim Thaçi, which I believe will be a case of a travesty of the justice system, where there's an attempt made by certain political leaders to show both siderisms, that, both the Serbs and the Kosovars committed war crimes. Well, no. The Serb military committed 95% of the mass murder or all of the mass murder, but 95% of the problem in Kosovo. And to try to equate what went on by Kosovar Albanians to what Serbian leader Milosevic and his military did is an outrage. And the fact that they wouldn't even let this former president go on bail while he was awaiting them to get their act together and figure out how to prosecute him. So I think that the prosecutorial system is no longer as effective as it once was. And obviously, as you mentioned, given the war in Gaza, there are many, many different interpretations of international humanitarian law. Obviously, what Hamas did in the beginning was mass murder, and what Israel has done in recent months in response in Gaza, clearly is is worthy of investigation because they don't seem to care about civilian casualties. They do seem to be using food as a weapon and acting in contravention of traditional and international humanitarian law. As an American, I do understand what it's like when your country is attacked and you become angry. That's what happened in America after 9/11. And we did things that in the end we weren't very proud of. I think Israel is doing things now that it isn't going to be very proud of when it looks back. But that's what happens. That's what Hamas initiated, perhaps on purpose. But in the end, I do hope that a way can be found for peace in Gaza and ultimately a resolution of that, centuries-old conflict.
Jamie, you ended up your work at the State Department at the last administration as someone who was responsible for global picture and work on global issues. But President Trump and Secretary Rubio are firing more than 1,300 people from State Department. How that will impact not only U.S. presence in big countries and important countries, but also in a small and unstable regions such as the Western Balkans, knowing that we have malignant players such as Russia, China, and others here playing their games, and also having politicians who are bidding for their bids here in the region of Western Balkans?
Well, it's very, very painful for a former diplomat like me to watch what Marco Rubio as Secretary of State and the President, his administration, are doing to the State Department and to the American foreign policy. They don't understand that soft power matters, that the foreign assistance we give, the information war we fight, the assistance we provide of humanitarian aid, all of this together is what has distinguished the United States from former leaders in the international community, because we aren't just pushing our weight around with military force, the way China would do, the way Russia is doing. And unfortunately, the big winner in all these cutbacks is Russia and mostly China. And I don't understand how Secretary Rubio, who comes from a tradition of anti-communist refugees to my country, who came here and understood the danger from communist parties like the Chinese Communist Party and dictators like Putin, is presiding over the biggest destruction of the American foreign policy apparatus since World War II. It's an outrage. There are so many specific examples I could go on for hours, but suffice it to say that we are conducting unilateral disarmament. There is a conflict and a confrontation in the world between China, who would like to displace the United States, and Russia would like to help China do that, and the United States and its friends and allies in Europe and Asia. By destroying our foreign policy capability, by taking away the tools that bring us support and respect and admiration, all these people are doing is helping the Chinese potentially, succeed, and they are laughing all the way to the bank in China and Russia at watching Marco Rubio and Donald Trump and his band of bozos destroy the Agency for International Development. I mean, to watch the richest man in the world proudly destroy programs helping the poorest man in the world is a disgrace. And I certainly hope it's the first line on that man's obituary, that the richest man in the world spent his time harming the poorest people in the world.
And one last question for this conversation. I asked her about your podcast, but I want to ask you also about that. It is unusual to see two of you doing a podcast, you and Christian Emenpour. We know that you two fought your battles as a spokesperson and a journalist, but also it is unusual to see ex-couple doing this. But from your perspective, how important is that you two are sitting every week and is discussing all these issues, especially in line of what we just discussed, and these issues who are worrying global community, not only United States or Bosnia or United Kingdom?
It's a very good question about the larger point. Let me start with the smaller point. It's actually kind of fun. Christiane and I were married for 20 years. On the subject of foreign affairs, we had extensive conversations over breakfast, lunch, and dinner and all of our life. And that continued to an extent after we were divorced. But now we can really restart the conversation full time, and we do, and it's interesting. And yes, there's always a bit of tension between those in government, as I was till recently, and Christiane, who holds governments to account. But right now, given what Trump is doing, I think the larger point here is that we need to restore an agreement, a consensus, an accord between those on the right and the left and the center about what it is the world is facing. I believe we are facing a combination of Russia and China that is dangerous, that will make the world a more dangerous place, that will put countries in the crosshairs of the Communist Party of China in Asia, that are already causing the biggest land war in Europe since World War II. These are dangerous regimes with dangerous intentions. And unless we in the West can agree about that and agree on what to do about that, our world is going to be a much more dangerous place.
Jamie, thank you so very much for your time and this conversation.
Very good. It's a pleasure to be with you.